A minority in Ghana's parliament is alleging that $100 million of petroleum funds is missing from state coffers. According to the minority spokesperson on Mines and Energy, John Jinapo, checks conducted by the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, could not reveal where the money accrued from Ghana's petroleum resources had been launched.
The Petroleum Revenue Management Act, Act 815, stipulates that when these oil or barrels of oil are sold, the preceding month, by the 15th of the month, all revenues accruing from our petroleum resources ought to be deposited or lodged into the Petroleum Holding Fund. The Petroleum Holding Fund is the receptacle for all revenues accruing from our oil resource, be it sale of oil, surface rental, royalties, or corporate. And so it's clear that is the law. If you don't put it there and you take it any other place, you are violating the law. But even more importantly, in the PIAC report, PIAC wrote to the minister to ascertain and determine where those lodgements were made. The minister responded by saying they couldn't provide those answers and that PIAC should rather go to GRA. PIAC contacted GRA, wrote to them, and GRA responded that they couldn't provide the answer. That is where the problem is. These two bodies cannot even explain PIAC where the lodgements have been made and into which accounts the lodgements have been made. Then we can conclude that indeed those monies cannot be accounted for. And if something cannot be accounted for, it is missing until found.
Now, the minority says they will use every parliamentary tool available to dig into the whereabouts of this $100 million they claim is missing from government coffers. John Jinapo again.
Is trying to use a special purpose vehicle known as Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited to borrow $500 million to spend today against our oil receivables, which is also against Act 919. It's against the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act. That is what they are trying to do. They want to borrow money today against future receivables, and they want to size the parliament. So they are trying to use unconventional and unorthodox means to establish this Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited and then use that as a conduit to borrow these monies against the nation's oil resources. Our laws are clear that our national oil company is the GNPC. And so if we increase our stake, be it carried or participating interest in the oil field, what you have to do is to transfer those shares to GNPC directly away from this Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited. We also encourage you, the media, civil society, and all Ghanaians to get involved. It's not just the job of the minority. In Parliament, we operate with laws. One of them is censure. If the majority side decides that irrespective of this abuse and blatant disregard for the law, they still want to stand with the minister, let the nation judge us and let posterity judge us. But we can only apply the law. We can only use parliamentary processes, legitimate processes, to ensure that we seek redress. And that's exactly what we are doing. But all cards are on the table. Every parliamentary tool, we shall use that tool.
Meanwhile, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, says government has set up an offshore company, Jubilee Oil Holding Limited, outside Ghana, and holding petroleum funds, which they say must be registered in Ghana according to law.
The GOHL is a foreign company. It's a foreign company, but subsidiary to GMPC. Once a subsidiary to GMPC, they should be registered in Ghana because GMPC is wholly owned by Ghanaians. And you cannot say that your 100% subsidiary is a foreign. It's not done. So we are saying that these people should come and register. Any money they generate, because it's a petroleum revenue, it should pass through, the holding fund, Petroleum Holding Fund. Before, if they want the money back, it should be allocated from Petroleum Holding Fund. That is our issue. So the money should come and be put into the Petroleum Fund because the subsidiary, 100% subsidiary of GMPC, and GMPC is 100% owned by Ghanaians.
But the government says there is no basis to that allegation being leveled against it. Lawyer Andre Japamesa is a Deputy Minister of Energy and joins us live through phone with some details. Thank you so much for joining us here. Why is government saying there's no basis? Where is the money?
For the opportunity, and let me say good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners. Clearly, the headline that some $100 million is missing is not borne out by the statement that is coming from the PIAC itself, the interview that you just played, and also from the statement or the interview that the minority spokesperson on energy indicated. You see, suggestion is that what government has done is improper and that a certain treatment ought to be attributed to the Jubilee Holdings transaction. That's completely distinct and separate from suggesting that some money is missing. Because indeed and in fact, Jubilee Holdings, came about because at the time that Anadako sought to transfer its interest to Aloe Oil, a Cosmos, GMPC through the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Finance indicated the desire to participate in that acquisition because there was a clear intent that we needed to move GMPC from merely being a holding company into operatorship. So if you recall, that process had started with the indication of taking some stake in the acre field, or increasing GMPC stake in the acre field. So when this opportunity came about, it was important for government to exercise its right to participate. However, because of the financing and the timing of the transaction, Anadako set up Jubilee Holdings Company Limited in the Cayman Islands to, as it were, carve that share of 7% out of the transaction that they were doing with Cosmos. Just so that when they conclude discussions with GMPC, then GMPC can take that interest. So the suggestion that government of Ghana set up a vehicle outside Ghana in itself is inaccurate. Because at the time that the government of Ghana was making the acquisition of GOHL, that company had already been incorporated by Anadako. But really, it's really of no consequence, right? Because as far as we are concerned, government of Ghana through GMPC then acquired with support from the Ministry of Finance the Jubilee Holdings Limited, and that is a wholly owned subsidiary of GMPC that has been registered as an external company here in Ghana. You can say that that process ought to proceed to a full transfer to GMPC, as opposed to suggesting that by reason only of the fact that that company has been set up or that GMPC acquired that share of GOHL in the Cayman Islands, that money is missing. When we all know that that money is in fact not missing, can only amount to disingenuity, without due respect.
Is that the money that Anadako capitalized the business with? Or it's a money that we as a country had to, get $100 million and capitalize the company?
So the $100 million is the lifting that Jubilee Holdings, by reason of its 7%, has lifted oil from the field. Because based on your share in the Jubilee field, whatever lifting at any particular time, because the oil comes in on a daily basis, it's stored in the FPSO, and at every point in time, when there's an offtake, then a vessel comes and lifts the oil and takes it to the market. Jubilee Holdings has lifted oil as a company or a subsidiary of GMPC up to 153 million or so. So the suggestion is that because Jubilee Holdings has lifted that volume of oil, which is GMPC's oil, that it has lifted through JOHL, its subsidiary, that money is missing. I'm saying that it can only be further from the truth that that money is missing. Because if you listen to PIAC, if you listen to John, my good friend Jinapo, nobody has suggested that the money is missing. They are saying that JOHL should not be the proper party to hold that money on behalf of GMPC.
If you listen to PIAC, PIAC's argument is that they have not been able to get government to explain to them where that money is. And that's a problem, isn't it?
But if GMPC, which is mandated by law to set up subsidiary companies, indeed, GMPC owns ex-loco, GMPC ex-loco, 100%. That is the vehicle that they were using to do the Anadaco transaction. And it's my understanding that the intention is to transfer the shares in JOHL to ex-loco to further the intent of making ex-loco an exploration, an operating company. Really? Where's the issue? Because
then why wasn't it done directly by allowing ex-loco to hold that?
Respect. You can only raise an issue if GMPC hasn't got the power to incorporate subsidiary companies. And government and GMPC have then proceeded in breach of the law to set up a subsidiary company. But if the argument is that GMPC has the right and the power to set up subsidiary companies, and GMPC has proceeded to do so to acquire the JOHL as a subsidiary of GMPC, how can anybody suggest that the money is missing?
Other argument is that the law says that the company must be registered in Ghana, but this is not so.
But the company is registered in Ghana as an external company. So really, unless of course we want to throw away the principles of our company law or Companies Act, it's important. Okay. I love for people to raise issues, but if you don't offer opportunity for people to then provide you with the details, and you quickly jump out there and create a certain impression that some $100 million is missing.
All right.
How can you draw that conclusion when the facts on the ground?
Lawyer Mensah, I'm grateful that you could find time tonight to explain issues to us. That's the Deputy Minister of Energy, Lawyer Andrew Ejapa Mensah. Now,